gives me great pleasure to introduce our next speaker. It's like a bit of a love-in between us, isn't it, Patrick? So whilst political editor of the Daily Express, it was actually Patrick that convinced the Daily Express to come out on the side of Brexit all those many years ago. So he led them in that Brexit fight and has continued to do so. He was elected as an MEP for the Eastern region, and as he told a little story about my wall, I used to do all the assessments for anybody who wanted to stand for election, and I have to tell you, Patrick had the shiniest shoes of anybody I've ever interviewed. So, as an MEP for the Eastern region, Patrick didn't just sit behind a desk and, answering the 4,000 emails that would come in every week from all these groups of people, but he actually set up different events, inviting Remainers to come and share a platform, much against the party's will at the time, and actually stood up for Brexit. And over the four and a half years we did those tours, they were very, very well attended and well received. Patrick then came across to the SDP, and is now our Brexit spokesman. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce one of my favourite people in the world, Patrick O'Flynn.
Funnily enough, today I haven't got shiny shoes on, but there you go. So, hello. I think through I'll manage. Most of the day, a few people I've bumped into have said, "Oh, we need to talk about stuff other than Brexit," of course, which is true. So here I am, your Brexit spokesman, and I'm going to spend the next 15 minutes talking about Brexit. And first thing I'll say is nearly 3.5 years on from the referendum in which the greatest number of British people ever to vote for anything voted to leave the European Union, there's a strong case for saying that the SDP shouldn't have to have a Brexit spokesman. It should all have been done and dusted a long time ago. But it hasn't been, principally because those who style themselves as progressives within the political establishment have decided the basic rules of democracy shouldn't apply when they don't like what the demos has voted for. The most astonishing, shaming thing of all is that we are the only party regarded as either centrist or left of centre that is still supporting the implementation of that referendum result. Let me read you a roll call of shame. The Labour Party, official policy now to block Brexit until another referendum can be arranged, with Remain on the ballot paper. The Greens the same, so too the SNP, Plaid Cymru, and what's now, I believe, known as the Independent Group for Change, although I'm told it's considering yet another name change to Anna Soubry, as she's about the only one left. But let me single out, of course, for special mention, the party that calls itself the Liberal Democrats. I don't know if you've seen on social media some footage from early on the referendum night in 2016 of the late Paddy Ashdown, saying whichever way it goes, he will forgive nobody who doesn't accept the result in the name of democracy and the sovereignty of the British people. I wonder then what he would have thought of his own party and its new leader, Jo Swinson, adopting an outright policy of dumping the referendum result and pulling the plug on Brexit without even the fig leaf cover of holding a second referendum. Now, that party, of course, got its name when it merged with the first iteration of the SDP. Before that, they were just the Liberal Party. Now, goodness knows a true Liberal would surely never sanction the overturning of election results before they're implemented. But let's leave that to them. But Democrats, I really think not. I think they should hand that bit of the name back to us. Now, our position in support of Brexit springs from two profound sources. The first is, yes, an unflinching belief in democracy as the only just political system and the only system that can bring the dependable social stability upon which so much including, by the way, a prosperous economy, depends. The second, also outlined in our new declaration, is support for the nation state as the upper limit of democracy, by far the best means to convene the social solidarity that's the bedrock of civilized life. So the supranational European Union, this embryonic empire being built in Brussels, is not and never can be a social democratic undertaking. Now, we're internationalists in this room by instinct. We support bodies, I think probably everyone in the room, such as NATO, the defensive alliance which protects us against external aggressions, the United Nations, the Commonwealth, which so brilliantly harnesses in an atmosphere of voluntary goodwill the common interests and affinities of this country's former colonies, but which never tries to govern them from London and acknowledges they are proud, independent nations of their own. So why would anyone support the idea of the most arbitrary and unnatural form of government I've ever heard of? I call it the BOOGIB, which stands for Bunch of Old Guys in Belgium. Why would the United Kingdom, one of the greatest and most outward-looking nations in the history of the planet, with connections to every continent, want its laws handed down to it by the unelected European Commission in Brussels? Well, we saw the answer in the referendum. It wouldn't, doesn't, and won't ever again put up with that being the case. What do the Brexit blockers in Parliament, I wonder, and in the media and in the unelected state think would happen were they to succeed in their plot to get Brexit called off? Do they really think 17.4 million people are going to shrug and move on and think, oh, that's a shame, but the establishment obviously tried its best and they just couldn't make it work? Do they think they can write the referendum storyline off as a bad dream, like that moment, this is for people of a certain age, like that moment in Dallas when Bobby Ewing is suddenly alive and well in the shower after having been murdered in the former series, and it was all a bad dream of Pammy, his wife? Perhaps they should make a little film for us. We pull back the national shower curtain, and there he is, soaping in the Head and Shoulders, turning to greet us with that gap-toothed smile, Mr. Guy Verhofstadt. All is well. Oh, what a gruesome thought. Because the truth is this, millions of us are never going to give this up. Brexit will dominate everything until it happens. And I make this prediction: the one thing that will cause the Brexit blockers more misery than failing to stop Brexit is if they succeed. The wrath of the British people will be fierce indeed. Can you imagine the reaction every time another slice of national sovereignty is removed? UK forces made to serve in an EU army, the removal of more national vetoes, the imposition of EU-wide asylum quotas. The question, of course, that looms for us now is what stance should our party take towards a possible deal that Boris Johnson still might get from Brussels? Should we, like Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party, adopt a stance right now saying that only a no-deal Brexit is acceptable? Such a position would clearly have attractions. It's simple, it's clear, it would shield us against any accusation of going soft. A no-deal departure would also teach the British political establishment a well-deserved lesson about trying to overturn a democratic decision. And it would save most, if not all, of the £39 billion divorce bill as well. But I don't think it's right to close the door on any possible deal. As the weeks go by, it's certainly becoming harder to see how a deal can be reached before October the 31st that will not give Brussels the ability to stop the UK going its own way, of us gradually taking a more distinct trajectory of our own. But should Boris Johnson be capable of attaining such a deal, that takes us out of the EU, out of the single market, out of the customs union, puts us back in full charge of our immigration policy, perhaps with a transition period of a year or two, an agreement that gives Britain back control of its destiny, then I think it would be wrong to oppose it just to say we've matched the Brexit party for purity. And of course, the devil will be in the detail if an agreement does come to pass. But I hope people will accept that I, as a 10-year Brexit campaigner for the Daily Express, for UKIP, for Vote Leave, and lately for the SDP, and as someone who opposed Theresa May's surrender agreement with its indefinite backstop, which I liken to the political equivalent of thinking you were leaving jail but being steered into solitary confinement, and the only way out would be to beg to go back on the wing. Well, I'm unlikely to recommend a sellout of the Leave cause. I would never do that. And while we're talking about Theresa May, let's remember her responsibility for the depths to which the Brexit debate has descended. She told us Brexit meant Brexit. She promised hundreds of times that we would leave on March the 29th. But then she, someone who had campaigned for Remain, but was entrusted by Leave voters to be true to her word and take us out, suddenly started threatening us with the prospect of no Brexit. Instead of giving the Commons a choice between her lousy withdrawal agreement and a no-deal Brexit, she never got the country ready for the latter. Instead, she effectively presented MPs with a choice between her lousy agreement and remaining in the EU. It was Mrs May, I suggest, who put Remain back on the table when she went and asked to postpone Brexit in the face of all the promises she'd made. And by doing that, she also energised the idea among the Remain fraternity that we might not have to do it, we might not have to leave. The idea has seen those opposition parties I mentioned at the start move the ratchet towards Remain over the summer and autumn. So she bears a very heavy responsibility, and the Conservatives, despite everything Boris Johnson says, must be on, in the last chance saloon. However, I very much welcome the fact that dithering Doris gave way to Boris. And the Conservatives do have one last chance to deliver. But I suggest there are segments of supporters of Labour, the Liberal Democrats, the Greens, even the nationalist parties, who are pretty disgusted at the anti-democratic antics of their normal parties, but will also be very reluctant to go Tory. Now, they are our natural recruits, so let's go out there and find them. Post the creation of the Brexit Party, the resurgence of the SDP, it could have withered on the vine, killed by the spring frost. It didn't. We've held together. It's been tough, as I can testify from the Peterborough by-election. And by the way, thank you to everyone who came and campaigned. But what we've learned, if we were ever under any illusions, is nobody is going to give us the keys to the political penthouse suite, as happened when the SDP came into being first time round. We are going to have to work our way up, floor by floor. We can do that with grassroots campaigners like Wayne Dixon here in Leeds, with unflappable leadership from William Clouston, with the nuts and bolts campaigning guidance of Lisa, above all, and with the commitment of everyone gathered in this room, and above all with our policies and our values that anchor us at the heart of common sense British public opinion. Just want to finish with this, that there was a book published in 1935, and I feel I should end by referring to a book, because whenever I attend SDP gatherings, I find most people other than me are published authors. A book called The Strange Death of Liberal England. And its title spawned many spin-offs. In 2005, someone published the strange death of Tory England, for instance, and 2018 saw a tome called The Strange Rebirth of Labour England. What I think we're seeing now is the strange rebirth of social democratic England, social democratic Britain, I should say. It's not proving to be an easy delivery or a quick one. It was never going to be. This is not an undertaking, I warn you all if you are under any illusions, that lends itself to fortune seekers or bandwagon jumpers. It's hard work. But having sat through the speeches today, having talked to many of you, having seen the number of people here, I do know this: we have something here that's well worth working for. Thank you.